Hey, ladies and gents, it's Sam back, and I am back from vacation. 5 states, 2,700 miles, and 4 very unhappy little children that had to sit in the car for that long. But I didn't get to sit along the pool and drink margaritas. I was out checking out some aviation museums. We went to Colorado, specifically the Denver area, and there's two very nice aviation museums if you ever get a chance to go check out. One of them is in Colorado Springs, which is the World War II Aviation Museum, and there is also the Wings over the Rockies, which is in Denver. That one's got a little bit more modern aircraft. This one here has mostly World War II and all flyable aircraft. Their hangar sits next to Westpac. Westpac is probably one of the, if not the best, World War II restoration companies in the world. This picture right here of this plane is, of course, in their hangar. They are a private organization. They are not related to the museum. However, you do get to go chance to go tour these warbirds. So, this is we all know the Corsair, right? The story of the Corsair, and of course what we have in game as well. However, this is a one-of-a-kind Corsair. Specifically, according to the title I put on it, the Swamp Corsair. There was 3 companies that produced Corsairs in World War II. One was the Vought, the F4U, which we all know, the F2, which was the Corsair that was built by Goodyear, and this plane, which was an not unusual, but it was built by the Brewster Company. Okay, so it has a different, this is the F3A1, right? So they all have a different F2, F3, F4. The Brewster Corsairs, as far as I can tell, never were in battle. These were mostly trainer planes. This specific one right here, which is the only one in the world, there is, as far as I know, not even a static display one. This one, of course, flies, so this is a one-of-a-kind plane. December 19th, 1944, in a training mission over North Carolina, pilot lost control of this aircraft and ended up belly flopping it into a swamp. The pilot did not survive, and as far as I could tell, and what these people, what some of the at the museum or at Westpac was saying, that he apparently tried to eject, didn't know which way was up, and ended up landing parachute unopened, I believe. So that was happened that's what happened to the pilot. This aircraft, after belly flopping into the swamp, was kind of forgotten. I'm gonna have to thank my wife for these pictures. She took these as they were coming, of course, out of the hangar. She took actually all the still photos, so if you're going to see some of them, that's what you're going to see here. And of course, this is just an absolute beautiful bird. Complete restoration. 1990, a individual from Minnesota actually went down and salvaged this aircraft from the swamp. Unfortunately, 10 years after he did that, the U.S. Navy decided they wanted the plane back, right? In doing so, there was quite an extensive lawsuit, and eventually took an act of Congress for this gentleman to keep this plane. He had this plane for quite a few years. He ended up fetching quite a bit of the parts. Obviously, this plane wasn't complete, to try to make this thing fly. However, it didn't work out that way. He ended up not being able to complete this aircraft. And I found this a little interesting. I did a little bit more research on this aircraft, and eventually I found some more information about it. It was put up for sale, and this is the actual website that it come from. I'll put the link in the deal if you guys ever want to check this out. But this is what the aircraft looked like after he pulled it out of the swamp. Obviously, there was some extensive cleaning he did here. So this is what he ended up with, and this was posted in 2010 with a price tag of $285,000 for this mostly intact aircraft, I think. So yeah, I'll post this into the link here, this warstuff.com, so you guys can check out these pictures if you wish. After his legal battle with the Navy, he was never able to completely finish this aircraft. With that said, I was able to do a little bit of a quick look at this aircraft. We were able to. This was actually in the back end of the hangar, so that wasn't able to get around to the sides real easy. What's interesting is, of course, is that every one of these aircraft have a oil can under them because these things leak ridiculous. Now in the background here, you'll see another aircraft they're working on a restoration. This is a Curtiss Helldiver. That was a replacement for the the Dauntless. Apparently, I don't think there's there's not one of these running. In fact, there's very few of them in the world, and I don't think there's an actual flying one. Now, all aircraft at this museum and Westpac in general are flyable. These planes are not static displays, so it's kind of real fun to be able to see these planes up close. So yeah, that was the gist of this. This is a Brewster F3. Still a Corsair, but not quite what you expect. Still a beautiful aircraft. I was glad I was happy to see it. And in fact, I think I do have one other little video here. This is the first time since 1974 that this thing was able to fly. Oh, listen to that engine. So that was the very first flight after 74 years of being taken from a swamp and restored. I think the restoration costs were well over $1 million for this aircraft. Of course, you saw the price of it for just the buying it, $285,000. Of course, then you had to restore it. So there was quite a bit of capital put into this. After we toured Westpac, we were lucky enough to be sitting there, and they brought this F4U. I can see, of course, in these pictures. I should have a small video of it you guys can watch as well. And they fired up this bad boy. Nothing like hearing that old engine roar, right? So I'm going to bring up the last part of this video here for you guys to check out the Swamp Corsair. Hey, ladies and gents, we are back with the second part here. We were able to stand, and they pulled this aircraft out for us to. They were going to do a engine start. So they had to pull you can see off to the left here is an A1 Skyraider. I have some video of that. We'll do a video on that a little bit later. I'm just kind of piecing together. I have a bunch of video from these two museums. The man to the right of the Corsair, as he comes out of the hangar there, is one of the owners of Westpac. I believe maybe the only owner. But so they're going to pull this guy out here, and they're going to run him over here to the side, and they're going to start him up. Now, there was 735 examples, I believe, 738 examples of the Brewsters built. Specifically, like we said, of the F3. They weren't apparently as good as the Vought or the Goodyear. I don't know what was the big difference, but they weren't well liked. Hence why they were used mostly for training. It was an interesting, historical, at least, listening to your guides, right? To think that this aircraft at one time had belly flopped into a swamp, then pulled out and then completely, utterly restored into flying form here. So now they've pulled him out here, out on the tarmac here. This is right next to the Air Force Base in Colorado Springs. There's 2 hangars, the one that, of course, you can see here, and then there's another one behind me. That's the World War II Aviation Museum, and we're going to do some videos of that. I have, like I said, I have a fair amount of footage from a bunch of different aircraft. However, this was my favorite, of course, with the Corsair. Seeing this thing come out of the shed, and then getting ready for the fire up here. I thank my wife for putting up for this. Thank my kids for not being too overly obnoxious with, "Dad, this is boring," because I heard it's. I could have spent like 4 or 5 hours at every one of these museums. If you get a chance, excuse me, go to these. If you get a chance, you're in the area. They're well worth the money that you're going to spend to check out these old warbirds. So now what you're seeing here, this guy do right here, he is turning the propeller. Now, most people, I don't know if people don't know this, but I'll explain why. These are radial engines. So when the engine gets cold, the oil has a tendency to seep by the piston rings and get into the cylinder, which, when you go to fire up the airplane, will cause hydraulic lock, damaging the engine, right? So what they're doing here is testing to see how much oil, or what they're doing is running it, and they're seeing if there's any pressure in the cylinders. And what this does is, of course, either moves the oil back to where it belongs, so when they start the airplane, there's not going to be any damage to the engine, or they're going to have to actually possibly remove a spark plug to drain the oil out. So that's why you see on radial engines, when they turn the propeller like this, is that they are trying to prevent engine damage from hydraulic lock. So these guys took a little bit of time. They spun it, I don't know how many times. Apparently there was not enough pressure that they had to drain any oil. So like I said, the owner there in the white shirt just climbed into the cockpit. He's going to fire up this airplane. So now it takes him a little while, so we're going to jump a little bit further ahead in the video before he starts to... now you can, of course, hear the motor start, the electric motor start here. You can hear the soft whine in the ground before he tries to turn over the radio. And it was really windy that day, so I'm sorry for the noise. And I'm going to have to get a better camera too if I'm going to start doing more of these. My phone just doesn't quite cut it, I don't think. But hopefully if you guys like these videos, maybe I'll start getting more into these type of videos. There we go. We get a little bit of turn on the propeller. And this, I'm standing maybe, this is about as close as they'd let us get. But yeah, it was ridiculously loud. Of course, you watched that video of it taking off. So these things, yeah, that's a lot of horsepower. So he takes a little, like I said, he gives it a few tries here. Eventually, there we go. Now he starts to get her turned over. But it was a beautiful sound, right? There's nothing like watching these old warbirds. The time and the care it takes, the amount of restoration that needed to get these planes back into flying shape is ridiculous. There we go. Now he gets her fired up. Blows a little bit of smoke out of it. And I only watched probably, maybe I probably got 30 seconds of this thing running. But we were actually back in the other hangar and coming back out, and this thing was still running. So he had it running for over 5 minutes easily. So yeah, they apparently take these out every once in a while, start the radial engine up and let it run. Here we go. I just like the noise, right? I just like to hear that engine when she gets up and running and starts purring. There we go. Ooh. So I hope you guys enjoy this. I'm gonna have some other aircraft up here for you guys to check out from my little vacation. You guys can see some of the. Now, actually, this is kind of a visual. The propeller is actually spinning full speed. I don't know why it didn't record it as such. I don't know if it's some sort of visual something, right? But this thing actually was speeding, just going around and around and around. You couldn't actually see the blades. I don't know why the camera caught it this way, but for the most part, yeah, that's what we get. So With that said, I hope you guys have a good night, and I hope you guys enjoyed the videos.